Welcome back to Nano Cruising. I'm Stefan Marceau, your host. Today we continue our interview with Alan Mulholland from Sailing Wave Rover. You will find out the details about the impact of the rogue wave. You will find out how he sailed back to Canada during COVID. You will find out how the YouTube channel support encouraged him to select the next boat and build it. You will find out how he launched the boat and crossed the Atlantic.
I heard this big noise. It was like a freight train coming toward the boat, and then the big slamming noise as the wave hits the boat. But this was what was different, because that's happened before. Then the boat got picked up quite a distance. I couldn't tell exactly. The hatch opened, and I could see the moon, because there was a partial moon, and then we got slammed down like we were dropped.
Wow.
Onto the water, and that's when
was that sideways? Sounds like you were surfing sideways or something, right?
Yeah, we were definitely on our side, and we landed on our port side. So it looked like we were picked up broadside or on the starboard quarter and then dropped down. And that's the way I have to describe it. The hatch opened as we went more than 90 degrees sideways, and a certain amount of water came in. Probably about 20 gallons. Yeah, about 20 gallons of water came in.
Okay.
But the hatch closed right away under that pressure as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a momentary thing. And a lot of that water landed on me because I was on the leeward side.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately I jumped up and started doing my damage control because the noise was so loud. So I checked the pilot house first to make sure it was still intact.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't cracked or broken and the ports were still okay.
Weren't you injured as well, though? Weren't you injured as well?
Yes, I was, but I didn't realize it at that point.
You didn't realize it at the time. Okay.
Yeah, I had cracked 2 ribs, but at that point the adrenaline is pumping. And when the adrenaline is pumping, even if you've broken your leg, you'll be able to run. The adrenaline is there for a reason. It's for emergencies.
Yes.
And so I'm in emergency mode, and I'm checking all that stuff. I quickly open the hatch. Look, I see we're still afloat, and I can see things are not quite right on deck. But my first instinct is to pump the boat out because the seas are still big and we're unstable. So I pumped the boat out. Didn't take that long.
Mm-hmm.
And then got up on deck, and I saw that the stern pulpit is all crushed and bent, especially on the port side. The solar panel was destroyed, and my wind vane, the Mark III, is askew. It's still all there because I lashed it on, because I learned that from my second boat build, which is a TT-26, a James Warren.
Oh, the worm. Wow, you built one of those. Wow.
But he's one of the guys who taught me about the importance of lashing over fixed point, flexibility over hard.
Right.
And so I always tried to employ that, and I employed that a lot in my new build. Mm-hmm. So the Mark III didn't snap off and break. It was still there. So I was able to move it back toward the center. Mm-hmm. I was able to get the boat. The sail was still there. All the halyards and everything, they're all in the water. I
think one of the pulpit was mashed pretty hard with the solar panel on it, right?
Yeah, the port side of the stern pulpit was totally like spaghetti. It was all bent up.
Yeah.
And the solar panel was totally, it was like a car crash, with the glass is all, it wasn't broken in shards, but it was all cracked. You couldn't use the panel anymore.
Right.
So I got the boat back under sail again. We were under reduced sail. I think maybe just a reef foresail was all I had, and got her self-steering. And these were reinforced trade winds. They were blowing, I found out the following day, 29 knots, because a catamaran passed me, and I asked him what the wind speed was the night before, and he said 29.
Yeah, so it's pretty heavy downwind, definitely.
Yeah, that's...
better downwind than upwind than that, definitely, though.
Well, that was the thing. I was going the right direction.
Yeah.
So then I quickly looked at, I had a brand new tablet. It was less than 2 weeks old. I just bought it in Canada and put it on the boat. And it was in a tablet holder, but that didn't survive the huge bang of the boat being dropped.
Right.
And it flew across the cabin, and it never worked again. But I did have my old tablet wrapped in bubble wrap, tucked away, and I pulled that out. And I had enough charts in that to get me to Martinique.
Right.
And so I thought, well, that's it. I'll go to Martinique. It's only 700 miles away. So that became the plan. Get to Martinique and then do a proper survey of the boat.
But you got a bit of a surprise when you arrived in Martinique, right?
Yeah.
About the world.
COVID.
The world had changed.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And Martinique is not your typical Caribbean island. It's a French territory, so it was no different than being in continental Europe. You know, they were really fast to lock down, and they've got a lot of resources in Martinique. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to go there, was because food is actually cheaper there because it's supported by the French government.
Yes.
So
yes.
If any of your listeners are wondering, a good island to stop at, Martinique is a great island.
Any of the French islands anywhere around the world, same way. So then COVID hit, you're in Martinique, and you decided, I think that's enough for that Contessa. You've reached the limit of what she can do. Is that what your thoughts were? You didn't think of fixing her up and continuing?
Yeah, so there was a leak. The funny thing was, she didn't leak when she was in port, but the leak wasn't that terrible. It was only maybe half a gallon a day, so 2 or 3 liters a day and so I just pump it out, and it didn't seem to get any worse. And I figured it was from the lower pintle, and the wind vane that was fine. And I don't know. I felt as though I really need to haul this boat, and I couldn't haul it because their yard was full. There's a big, and it was expensive. That item was expensive. So I thought, I don't want to spend a year here waiting for the low season to get my boat in the yard, and to have to toss a bunch of money at it because I didn't really know what was wrong with it. So I decided, well, I'll sail back to Canada because that meant it was only a 3-month stay in Martinique, and I could leave sort of the end of April, spend most of May at sea, and be back in Canada in June. And that was the plan. So I actually sailed that whole distance. That was to that point in my life. That was the hardest sail I ever made. Was from Martinique to Prince Edward Island without stopping. It was variable wind, all kinds of, there were gales, there were all kinds of stuff. But the one thing there wasn't any vessel traffic. There was no airplanes, it was COVID-19.
Yes,
so
that's
the
right.
ocean was empty. And the astute listener might be saying, well, how did you get all the way to Prince Edward Island without touching land? The thing was that if I stopped in Cape Breton when I went through the Canso Canal, if I stopped there and tied up, then I would have had to wait 2 weeks. Like I would have had to quarantine in Nova Scotia for 2 weeks.
Right.
So,
right. So you had to go all the way to where you wanted to be.
Well, no, I contacted the folks in Martinique, and I contacted Mrs. Rover, who contacted someone we knew in Port Hawkesbury, and they contacted the Canso Canal people and arranged for me just to enter the canal and hover in the center of the canal until they flooded it and then let me go instead of tying up. So they weren't going to force me to tie up. And they understood the situation. So that's what we did. And then I got back to Prince Edward Island. And when I got back to Prince Edward Island, you would think after, I think it was 31 or 32 days, that trip, you would think that they would let me go ashore, but no, I had to stay tied up until our version of border security came to inspect, which because of COVID, they had to come all the way from New Brunswick. It was like 10 or 12 hours after I arrived that I got to go ashore. So that was the first voyage. But we covered a lot of negative things there, but overall it was such a positive experience. It was fulfilling. It was a voyage of a lifetime. And And I was so excited about the whole thing.
And your YouTube channel took off during that time, right? So that became bigger.
Yeah.
Right?
So I got back into just doing my regular life. I became a carpentry instructor at Holland College. That's the only technical college in Prince Edward Island. And I bought a new piece of property for us and started building a little homestead. And then the channel kept growing, and lots of people kept saying, you know, hey, when's the next boat? You can't stop now. And it was the encouragement from the channel that really encouraged me to go the next step. Yeah, it was.
Is that right? That's amazing. That's amazing. I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I had all these ideas of boats that I've been collecting in my head, and I thought, well, let's see if we can find a boat that would fit that bill. Something smaller, plywood, because wood is a great thing. People automatically go, oh, it's plywood, it's going to rot. Not necessarily so, not if you look after it. Like this boat has been outside now probably a year and a half, and it's as in fine a shape now as, you know, because I took the time to seal everything in fiberglass. And there are actual companies now in France that are building very, very high-end racing boats out of plywood. Like it's back in favor as long as you build it properly, you know. And we've got so many good materials and resources now that you can do it. And anybody can take a look at my channel. I'm pretty sure everything I've done is pretty good example of, you know, a decent way of building a boat quickly without getting into the weeds.
So let's talk about the selection of design. Well, actually, you were looking for a boat, and then you decided, oh, I need my own design.
So I almost went with Don McIntyre's 580, which probably a lot of people are familiar with.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
I even emailed back and forth with him, and, you know, there was a lot of excitement there, but I just couldn't wrap my head around. It was just too small.
It's about the same size as what you have now, but.
Well, 580 and 6.5. So the difference is it's 0.7 of a meter, and you're you know, you might say, what's 0.7 of a meter? Well, it's about 2 feet, a little over 2 feet.
The volume. It's the volume.
Yeah,
and the volume.
But you see the interior of my boat, and you see the interior of the 580.
It's huge. Your interior is huge.
Everybody who's been on my boat, they are amazed by the inside. You know, and first people right up to 5'10", they can stand straight up in my boat, and that's not happening on the 580. So, and I think in many ways my boat is, you know, it's a strong sea boat, especially the way I've done the cockpit. Like I've done a lot of things on this boat that I wanted to do, and so I ended up getting working with Andy Dyes, who's a naval architect in down in the Baltimore area.
Yes.
And he designed the boat, but I then, it's kind of funny, you know, because I would tell him all this stuff after I had done it, but I changed about 40% of that design to what we see, and and funny thing is, he's delighted with what I came up with. You know, he thought this is great, but it is, anybody who buys the plans will not. If you follow the plans, you won't end up with this. So I'm actually in the process of redrawing the plans with another guy back in Prince Edward Island to draw the boat as it is, and which is a much different boat. So there will be a set of plans coming out for it, because people are going to see it over the next few months sail across the Atlantic. It'll sell itself, I think. It sailed itself with the Mark III, and now it might just sell itself. So I was really driven to do it because I had very limited time, because I'm not a wealthy man. I can only afford to take so much time off to do these adventures, you know, and so, but then when I started the boat, we did that fundraiser, the Benefactors Bulkhead, and that went a long way. There was 120 names of people made a donation to the boat. And I'm looking at it right now, and looking at a name that a lot of your listeners would know, which is Sam Holmes Sailing.
That's right.
Sam, actually, he sent me a donation for the boat. And there's a ton of people there who I know personally now, and, you know, have reached out and we're friends. And and there's some companies there too, Total Boat. They've been really good to me. And Nova Braid, which is a rope maker in Nova Scotia, and the Charlottetown Yacht Club.
Nice.
They hosted me for 3 weeks. I look at a lot of these names and I know these people. It's
That's amazing. That makes it really personal. Makes it yours. Very personal. It's amazing.
And then to help round out the finances for the build, I started selling the plans for the Mark III. And to date, we've sold just under 500 plans. So that went a long way to covering the cost of the fiberglass and the epoxy and, some of the building material as well. Mm-hmm. So, I was really fortunate, and I wasn't counting on that.
The community, it's great you built the community, and this community built you. So
and then I ended up getting a lot of folks who contacted me and came over and helped, and that was terrific.
Yes.
So a lot of things came together, and that's why I was able to build it so quickly.
But even physically building it quickly is still pretty demanding. 1 year, I believe you built that boat, right?
I probably could have done it in half that time if I didn't record everything on YouTube. You set up the camera, you set up the lights, you set up a microphone, and you have to.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so,
that's amazing.
And that's because it's such a simple boat. Like, a lot of people have fancy woodwork inside their boat, but not in this. This boat is a real adventurer's dream. I really like it. It's so practical.
What's different about this boat? What's unique? I know some of it visually, but maybe tell our listeners a little bit. What's unique about this boat that you couldn't find in the market?
Well, for 21 feet, I've got headroom, so that's one thing. The cockpit, there's no cockpit, so.
Although you do stand and sit outside, you kind of made like a high pulpit, I guess.
Yeah, I've got 2 seats in the quarters of the boat that are attached to the stern pulpit, and I sit there. But I don't need to steer. Like, I always set up my steering gear.
Yes.
Even for short trips, I'm not steering. I'm only steering the last mile or two, or the first mile or two, to get in or out of port. But after that, she's steering herself. So I don't even need to be out there. A lot of times I open the hatch and I just sit in the hatchway and just look out.
Right.
And look at my tablet, which has a chart on it, and I just keep track of what's going on there. So and the other unique thing about this boat is she's junk rigged.
Yes.
So the junk rig was something I was really eager to try, because on the Contessa, now, mind you, there are other people who can do other ways, but on the Contessa, I had to go forward to the mast, or even more forward to the foresail, to reef it. So I didn't have roller reefing, I had slab reefing, and the same on the mainsail. So that requires going forward.
Yeah.
And I felt pretty good about it. I didn't see a problem. But as you get older, you start to think, oh, well, do I still have that same sense of balance? In short, yes, the junk rig is absolutely the solo sailor's best friend. You can reef it so fast. I don't even have to leave the hatchway. I discovered that shortly after. I just need to open the hatch, stand in the hatch, undo one rope, and down that sail comes. I can take it down 1 panel. I can take it down 5 panels. So it's really fast to reef and to control.
Nice. And you don't have stays, I guess. You don't have stays either, do you?
No stays, so there's no chase in that respect.
So your boat is very unique, and it worked out really well, obviously.
Well, now there are a couple other things. So it has bilge keels. So not a center keel, but it has 2 keels, one on each side, and they're splayed out 15 degrees, and the boat is designed to keel over 15 degrees. So no, that's not rocket science. That's the keel angle that's optimal for just about any boat. Even though a lot of boats are sailing at double that, you shouldn't. You lose your efficiency beyond 15 degrees.
So generally, you sail her pretty flat, fairly flat, 15 degrees or so.
Flat to 15 is where this boat shines. Nice, and also the hull is flat. I insisted that it be a flat hull because, A, for simplicity of building, to bolt on the keels, and then it's what we call a Sharpie design, because I was talking to this other friend about that before I even spoke to the architect, and we said, Sharpie design. a lot of modern boats are using that hull form. It's not like we invented it. A
No,
lot of boats are using it.
that's
So
right.
flat bottom and light. Keep the boat really, really light. So I went in an entirely different direction than the Contessa.
Yes. So it must sail pretty fast then. You must see the difference in the timing of your two crossings. I don't know what they are, but I would think.
Oh, yeah, this boat was way faster. This boat, it averaged almost 100 miles a day en route to the Azores.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, that was very good sailing. Like we really went out of our way to catch currents, and we had good winds mostly.
Nice.
So, the Contessa averaged less than 75 miles a day.
Mm-hmm. Of course, over a week, that's a big difference for sure.
Considerably faster.
Definitely.
So we launched the boat and then went to Cape Breton.
Yes.
And then I was just trying to find a weather window to head out on the Atlantic to get to the Azores.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't get it. Couldn't get a break because that was a really active hurricane season. That was 2023, summer of 2023.
Yes.
And it was late summer. And it was just one hurricane after another. At a certain point, I had to say, right, that's it. We're heading down the East Coast. We'll try again
Which is not a bad idea. You get to shake the boat out a little bit, right? And
turned out to be a great idea because the boat needed a shakedown and it needed a few improvements. And we found that as I was heading down the coast. Now, a lot of people go, oh, it's just coastal sailing. Well, when you're 100, 120 miles offshore like I was, there's no big difference between that and being on the ocean. So
no.
It really did get tested, but yet I was able to close in again on the shore and get things sorted. So it turned out that I needed to change the Mark III's trim tab. In fact, all I needed to do was follow my own plans. I tried an experimental.
You tried to improve.
Yeah,
huh?
I did. I thought I had a good idea, but it wasn't. So I just went back to the old plans and it worked perfect. And we needed a bit more weight on the boat. So we added an extra, I think, 200 pounds of lead, 100 pounds on each keel. We did that when I was in Baltimore, but just getting to Baltimore was great. Everywhere I stopped, there were, in fact, I stopped in places largely where people had reached out to me and said, hey, I'm following the channel. If you come in here, I should be able to find you a mooring. And so that was all it took. I said,
amazing.
Right, I'm heading there. And it was terrific. I met the great people. They were able to show me, do a little bit of sightseeing. And, it's just a lot of good feelings there. And all those folks know that they're invited up to my homestead. So, yeah.
And you've made friends for life, obviously, too.
Absolutely.
Right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Then, just as quickly as possible, I started heading down the Chesapeake again and got to Virginia Beach and spent 5 days in Virginia Beach and waiting for a weather window. And
you shoved off from there to cross the Atlantic? You waited for your window,
yes.
And that's where you took off. Okay.
Yeah. So I left from there, from Virginia Beach.
Good. So, yeah, then tell us a little bit about your passage. How did it compare with the previous passage of Contessa?
I got into the Azores and I felt like I was ready to leave the next day. Like,
Really?
physically,
Really?
all I needed was just that one good night's sleep and I was ready to go. And that was on account of two things. One was, this boat is so easy to sail. Like, it doesn't demand a lot of you.
Okay,
like
I think I'm ordering plans tonight.
It's about as easy as it gets, and that was amazing. I never felt quite like that. And the funny thing is, I'm older now. I'm 5 years older than I was when I went on the Contessa.
Correct.
The last thing I'll say is, so when I was approaching the Azores was jam packed. The anchorage was full.
So did you have to go back to your old local grounds?
I contacted that guy that I knew really well, or I had Mrs. Rover contact him and say, can you work some magic for me? Find me a space."
My
And
boat's even smaller now, right?
yeah, and he said, "Oh, it's never been this full before. It's everywhere." And but then about 48 hours before I got there, he managed it, and there was a spot, tiny little spot, way tucked at the back, and I arrived at 2 o'clock in the morning. He was there waiting for me, even though it was a work day and he had to go to work the next
Oh
day.
my
He
God.
was waiting for me, and he hailed me, and he took me right to the spot, which was
Wow.
great because I never
Wow.
would have found it. It was a forest of mass, and
Yes,
it's nighttime.
for
And
sure.
so he
For
got
sure.
me right to the spot. And even though it's incredibly late, we went out for a couple of beers after that anyway, like that poor guy. Yeah, it was the most challenging sail coming from the Azores to Baltimore, Ireland. But Baltimore, my goodness, what a place to stop. There are two places a sailor has to stop. One is
Pete's Cafe.
Porta,
You
the
went?
Porta Corta, you're right, and to go to Pete's Cafe, Peter's Sport Cafe,
Peter's
and
Sports
you
Cafe. Yeah.
they have a Wave Rover pennant hanging there now, and they were really nice about it. The owner came in and made a little ceremony of it and gave me their pennant, and it's a real treasure. I'm going to keep that. That's cool. And so they've got my pennant now. And then when I got into Baltimore, it turns out that the Irish Cruising Association, in with the Junk Rig Association, had purchased for me pilot of the south coast of Ireland. Actually, two pilots of the
Okay.
entire coast of Ireland.
Wow.
And they left it in a package at Bush's Bar, and they left me an email saying, "Go to Bush's Bar, there's a package for you." And I went to Bush's Bar, and it was busy, and it's full of pennants and maritime paraphernalia. It's the equivalent of Peter's Sports Cafe
Wow.
in Baltimore.
Wow.
And the busy bartender, I said, "Hi, my name's Alan Mulholland. I think there's a package for me here." And he goes, "Oh, yes, here it goes. I've had it for 2 weeks. Here you go." And they wanted to hear the story, and everybody, they get all kinds of boats coming in across the Atlantic, but they get very few 21-foot boats. So they make a big deal of it, and they ask for a pennant, and now there's a pennant flying in Bush's
Nice.
Bar. The Commodore of the Baltimore Sailing Association just happened to be there, and he was delighted, and he gave me one of their pennants. So I've I've got this nice collection of memorable stuff that I plan to put on a wall when I get back to my homestead
Nice.
to
Nice.
uh, to memorialize this voyage,
Absolutely.
because it has been so special. I have never ever really enjoyed a voyage as much as this. I think my level of experience now is high enough that I'm I'm at a level where I can really suck up all the enjoyment
Mm-hmm.
and what's happening, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so that's been part of it. And I've been living each day as though it were my last. Each day I'm saying to myself, whatever the situation, you've really got to embrace it. If it's cold and wet, embrace it. It's part of the whole adventure. Steph, it has been a real pleasure talking with you, and thank you for your interest. I'm always thankful when people find this little story interesting. So thank you, and hopefully your
It's a great
viewers
story.
will as well.
That's a great it's a great story. Thank you. It's been wonderful talking to you. Really fun. Really fun. So appreciate it. What a great storyteller he is. So our next episode will be David Norwell. He wrote a book called A Complex Coast. It's a kayak journey from Vancouver Island to Alaska. It's a physical journey, but it's also a personal journey. So it's a very interesting story. Looking forward to sharing it with you. So again, thank you for joining us. Let's continue the nano cruising journey. Join us on our Facebook group and discuss the newest episode. Don't be shy to share pictures, stories. If you don't want to miss an episode, the best way to follow is to subscribe. We will be notified of the new episode. And in closing, as usual, Seize your own adventure.